how you started the authorship journey. Like what that's we're seeing a lot of authors pop up nowadays, but for you being in the programming world and then traveling all over and being an author, that's very, very interesting to me. It's very interesting. So tell me more about that.
So now I've been writing for a good long while. Bruce Tate. I've had a number of technical bestsellers. Normally, I'm a big fish in a small pond. I did break through with a book called Bitter Java, which your readers will find is a terrible book with a good title. And so this book was written right after I left IBM. And to tell just a brief story, this was one of the lowest parts of my life. My wife's mother was sick, and she was overseas when she got sick, and they couldn't take care of her there because of insurance concerns. So we had a two-level house, but the first level was an open concept. So you can imagine there was this dying woman in the middle of our breakfast nook with two kids and even a wound sucking machine that just went shh, shh, just basically suffocating the whole room and taking all the joy out of life and everything that was happening there. I was a technical person, and the internet bubble was exploding because it was right at the end of 1999, and I was unemployed. And when I lost my job, my goal was to start writing because I said anybody can write. I'm pretty good at it. And so what happened was I wrote a book that had an excellent title at exactly the right time. And so that Bitter Java title was important because there's a moment in time when people were afraid that there's going to be this overarching language that would control everything. And so I wrote this book, and this was way back when Amazon wasn't really that popular yet, and they would offer a book for sale before you could actually get it, and people saw that name pop up, and there was a technical community called Slashdot, right? So they found this book and the title, and so we're in the middle of the breakfast nook, and the whole family, including the mother, are huddled around the monitor. We're hitting refresh, refresh. And we said, hey, we sold one. We sold one, right? We're number 2 million on Amazon. And then it started creeping up, and we would keep hitting reload, reload, reload until it went to 10,000. So we were the 10,000th best book in all of Amazon, not just technical ones. And it kept rising and rising until we were amongst the best sellers, and then higher and higher until I was between John Grisham and Stephen Hawking. So number 7 books of all technical books we'd actually before it actually became a bit widely available. And then once it became available, I didn't sell. I barely sold another copy. Right, the reviews came out. It wasn't a great book. But what it did do is it allowed me to start a journey, and I was invited to participate in conferences and with other authors. So that's how I got started.
That's awesome. And since then, how many books have you written?
Oh gosh, somewhere around 15.
Wow.
So a lot of them. There were a number of books that were well written, but sold poorly, and a few books that were that actually did pretty well and actually won some awards. There's an award called the Jolt Award. That's a productivity award. So I've won that twice. And then there was a pretty special book called 7 Languages in 7 Weeks. And the idea of that book was that the programming world was changing from single core computers to multi-core computers. And when this happened, all the programming languages really needed to change. And this book kind of brought people along in the journey as I was learning how to navigate these waters. And the interesting thing about this book was there was a man named Joe Armstrong that had written a language called Erlang. And the Erlang language was a little bit popular in Sweden, but not very popular everywhere else. but it was technically beautiful, just an absolutely gorgeous language. And then there was a language that I was working on that a lot of people knew called Ruby. And in fact, it was a beautiful language and a beautiful community, but it was written in a way and structured in a way that it really wasn't good for the new generation of computers that was coming out. And so I wrote this book, Seven Languages in 7 Weeks. And after I'd written the first three chapters, one of them was about Erlang. And so I did some kind of crazy things that started to get my editor's attention. Like I would compare each programming language to a movie and a movie star in it. And they kind of liked that because it allowed you to switch headspace from one to the next. But anyway, after I had three languages written in the book, my publisher said, "Hey, I've got a couple of reviewers to send it to." And I said, "That's great." And I get this note back from Joe Armstrong, which was the creator of one of the languages. And he actually said, "The author understands my language very well," which was patently not true, right? I had just based my examples off of his examples. And so he was liking his own work. And he said, "But the author doesn't understand this other language very well," which was called Prolog. It was
Mhm.
one of the early artificial intelligence languages. And so I basically approached Joe to have him teach me Prolog. And he adopted this whole idea of this book and took me under his wing. And that really gave me the technical start.
That's amazing. A lot of technical language lingo in there. I hope people understood that. Um, but I want to add on to what you just mentioned. Um,
Yeah.
you definitely went through some ups and downs when it comes to distribution of the book. But the what different things did you do when you sold the 7 languages in 7 weeks? Uh, a lot of times when people come on our show and they want to talk about their book, and I go in there and I'm like, hey, look at the ratings. They have 1 rating, 2 ratings. I'm like, when was like you couldn't get your mom or your sister or your brother to write you a review? You
Right.
in here, you have successfully launched the book to 180 reviews. I would say that's pretty fairly good. So tell us the journey about that. Like, what was the difference in the earlier books and this one, and what lessons did you learn through that?
Yeah. So I think that reviewers are important, and it's also important to bring people along. I mean, people don't write in a vacuum, and as you're aware, the writing business, it isn't so lucrative anymore in terms of the book itself, but in terms of building a career and building connections, it's extremely important. So the idea of getting reviews, part of that is building community. And once a community has followed you around, you can ask them to take a look at a book. Or, for example, it might allow you to do something different. We have a new book out. Well, new is in a couple of years old now. It's called Currently Away, and that's the book that we talked about last time. And so, Currently Away was a travel memoir, and that was a new genre to me. It was a story within a story. Um, but the cool thing about that book is that I had an audience that I could say, "Hey, you don't know me in terms of a person. You know me as a technical author. You don't know the broader Bruce Tate. Come get introduced." And we were able to kind of kick that book off as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I think a lot of times people undervalue the power of distribution and the community that you need to build and the people that you're trying to target. Um,
Yes.
it's not does not mean that the content of your book is undervalued anyhow, but if it doesn't reach the right audience, you not might not get the right impact that you need. Like for specifically one of your books, your specific target audience were, I'm guessing, engineers and software developers, uh,
Yes.
who were literally focused on learning that language. And
Yes.
it switches out through what genre you're trying to target and what team and things you use. So, so what lessons did you learn in that, Bruce? Like, I would love to hear some of those lessons that the good,
So
bad, and the ugly. I love all three.
in terms of promotion, I've learned that when you finish let's say the beta version of the book. you put the last word down in your first rewrite. That's probably about a quarter of all the work that you're going to do with the book. The promotion is absolutely huge. And promotion means going out and talking to people about your book. It means, and some of this work might be paid, some of it might not be paid. But it's finding, if you can't find the speaking gigs, it's going to conferences, it's finding like-minded people, it's doing podcasts like this one. But all of that work is tremendously important, but it has to be focus work, right? You have to be able to find the people that are interested in the books that you want to write. Like, for example, the 7 languages in 7 weeks, that launched a new genre. Most books at the time were written about one specific technology. And what people were missing were the holistic view of how do you be a good software engineer? What do you have to know to be a holistic software engineer? And there were a whole lot of problems I had to solve for that book. Like, one of the problems was your headspace changes when you go from chapter 1 to chapter 2. You can't just have a cliffhanger and says, "Hey, Johnny is got his fingers dug into the side of a cliff. He's going to fall. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Turn the page." No, I'm going from language Ruby to the language IO, and they're completely different. And maybe they don't have anything to do with each other, but I have to bring the reader along.
Yes.
So I had to solve that problem, right? And to solve that problem, I built these movie characters, but that tied into the promotion, because then I could promote within conferences. I could say, "Hey, Mary Poppins meets the Matrix," right? And people say, "What does that mean?" Well, then I could tell the story about the connecting of those two ideas in the book, and how I got your headspace from one book to the next. It all
Yes.
ties together.
I want to double down on what you just said.
Yeah.
Um, there's a reason that Apple is very successful. There's a reason that McDonald's mascot is a clown. There's a reason Starbucks is very successful in the world. There's a reason Google is very successful in the world,
Yeah.
because they focus on the user experience and the end experience of any person going through their product, service, or customer review. Everything they focus
The
on
whole
is,
life cycle.
yeah, it's a whole life cycle. Is that experience is not on the product itself. I mean, that comes along. Obviously, you have to have good products to sell, but their focus is on improving that, from that first click to checkout to buying an iPhone to unboxing an iPhone to holding that iPhone to having the community of iPhoners, right? To have
Right.
like,
Right.
it's that's why
To the
people get
conference, right?
successful. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Wow. Awesome. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us, Bruce.
Sure.
What would you say? And this is my last question for you for today's segment, Bruce. What would you say is your goal for being on the show today?
Um, I think I would like to introduce people to the book Currently Away. The Currently Away book. I think it's an important book about a journey, but the types of journeys that we take that help us change our mindsets. It's about going from a place where we were letting life happen to us to imagining what must be true if we were to accomplish our goals. And this goes right into what you're talking about with Vision Bros, right? So we had to have a vision, and then we had to think about ourselves in the future, and what must have been true for that vision to come true. And when we were done, we had completely remade ourselves, and we'd implemented this vision, and we'd surrounded ourselves with curious people. And we would go from place to place, from dock to dock, and at the end of that day, we would surround ourselves with the boaters of that day, and you would talk about how you almost wrecked your boat that day, right? And today we do the same thing, not on docks, but around dinner tables. And it has been a tremendous impact on our lives. So Currently Away, that's the story I'd like to talk about.
That's awesome. So let's share more on that. Like, what is? I would love to hear more on about that book. Tell me
So
more on that.
Currently Away is about a time of COVID where I have pretty high risk symptoms on a lot of different dimensions. I really thought the disease was going to kill me. And my wife and I were both depressed in 2022 as we were thinking about what was about to happen. And we knew we had to quarantine because of my risk factors. And one day, my wife looked out the window at a river and said, "Wait a minute. What if our quarantine, instead of being in a 2,000 square foot house, what if it was in a 2,900 square, or what if it was in a 290 square foot boat with a big back porch? How different would our life be?" And so this was about the story of buying the boat, getting ready for that journey, deciding to make this journey during this kind of politically charged time, and having to be with people on both sides of the aisle, and how we were able to bridge those gaps and navigate some pretty real difficulties. And at the same time as we were kind of rewiring our boat, we were rewiring our life stories and our futures.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a vision pro yourself.